think we're live. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech, live on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Today I bring you sad news because I've been watching Mac Studio reviews all this morning, watching people do speed tests and Geekbench tests and export tests and all these things surrounding how insanely fast the fastest Mac is with the M1 Ultra chip with 6 Thunderbolt ports, that huge heatsink. And I was very excited to test it tomorrow for you because as soon as it was available to put in an order, I basically put one in. Like right as the event ended, I checked the Apple Store app and it went live, and I clicked the buy button and I configured basically the fastest M1 Ultra chip there was, the non-bin 64-core variant, and in preparation of taking delivery of it tomorrow. For whatever reason, I don't know, maybe the 64-core GPUs were in short supply and I'm in an area where they can't prioritize it quite yet, but they've pushed it back several days, so not only am I going to be late relative to all of the YouTubers on Tim Cook's nice list who got it early today and got to drop their videos this morning, but it sounds like I'm not getting mine until next week, which is definitely a bit of a bummer, and something I'm already throwing a wrench in some of my plans because I was hoping to do all these videos tomorrow. But I guess on the one side of good news is that the studio display at least is still scheduled to arrive tomorrow. But then even that I'm having a hard time getting excited for because I'm hearing all these bad things surrounding the studio display, and particularly its webcam, from people reviewing it. Excuse me. Just that the webcam is not quite as crispy as it's meant to be, and a lot of people are complaining about the quality on the studio display webcam, which unfortunately I think the webcam was probably what I was most looking forward to about this monitor, because I've never had center stage on a Mac before. Pretty much the only times we've done live streams with center stage is it had to be on an iPad, and the iPad has to be, you know, propped up on some little stand, and it has to be kind of at an awkward low angle, and the software you have on iPad is never very good relative to the live streaming software you have on Mac. So I was very excited for that, and to find out that it kind of compresses the crap out of the the image, and Apple says there's a firmware update coming to hopefully fix the quality of the studio display webcam. Makes me hope that software is coming soon and we don't have to wait too long. But yeah, unfortunately that means that Mac Studio coverage from this channel, at least, is going to take a bit longer than originally planned. JSN said he canceled his. Hated that I had to pay more for the height adjustable, but can't rotate it. Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird to choose the term tilt and height adjustment, even though it doesn't rotate. The monitor will require an update to make the camera better. How does that even work? Does it plug into the Mac and then check for updates? Or does the A13 chip on the monitor connect to Wi-Fi and just update itself in the background? Like, how does that work? Stupid logic to make it look like the Pro Stand but take away a good feature of it. I think that the rotating feature is likely what makes the Pro Stand cost so much. Yeah, I don't know how you update the monitor. That's a good question. If you're going to go all out on processing power, you might as well go all out and get a display with a fast refresh rate. The problem is none of the high refresh rate displays I've found look very good or have great dynamic range as good as the built-in display in my 16-inch MacBook Pro. That's really the star of the show here. It's like all these standalone monitors can't catch up to the display specifications of the 2021 MacBook Pros. These were just such a good combination of dynamic range and refresh rate, and nothing can touch it still. Might be how, like, the AirPods get their firmware updates. How do they get their updates? Don't they get them wirelessly through the iPhone, though? Like, they're connected via Bluetooth, and you leave them in the case plugged in? How does that work with the studio display? You leave it plugged into your Mac with Wi-Fi, and because updates typically require a restart. So, like, is the monitor just going to shut down one day and you're trying to use your monitor and it's like update in progress? I don't know. There's no unicorn display if you want the Apple aesthetic and a high refresh rate. I guess I'm partly holding my breath for Ross Young, who is proven to be a fairly reputable supply chain analyst. He was, for those who don't remember, the first guy to come forward and say the new MacBook Pros are going to have 120 Hz ProMotion. and no one else had said that, and I was like, what? That's amazing. That's too good to be true. Don't get my hopes up. And I was like, I'm gonna be really mad at Ross Young if he ends up being wrong on this, and he was not. That rumor ended up being correct, and I was super excited. So he's saying once again that they expect a new mini LED panel to come out in June with 120 hertz, but I'm still confused how exactly you're going to get Thunderbolt 4 to support that, because Thunderbolt 4 can't handle 5K at 120 hertz. So possibly they will downscale it if you're using Thunderbolt 4, which I wouldn't mind, by the way. I would be perfectly content if that new monitor came out, and if you plug it in via Thunderbolt 4, it just downclocks it to 4K at 120 hertz. I'd be like, perfect. I'm happy with that. And then it just comes down to what the price of it is. But why do you need the Mac Studio to edit YouTube videos? I don't need the Mac Studio. I'm reviewing the Mac Studio. I'm not keeping this thing. I'm just going to do some videos on it because this is a tech channel and we talk about tech products. Oh my god. No, I'm very happy with my current MacBook Pro. I'm not planning on replacing that, especially because we have lots of trips that we're planning right now where I'm going to spend fairly extended periods of time away from home. So I'm not going to spend all my money on a computer that just sits on my desk that I'm not taking with me. Proprietary connection? If that's true, again, that's one of the scenarios, is that in order to achieve 5K at 120 hertz, they're going to have their own proprietary port, or they're going to release Thunderbolt 5 or rely on HDMI 2.1, which would definitely be weird because at least with the Studio display and the Pro display, they're all reliant on USB-C and Thunderbolt. I would be very shocked to see Apple come out with a monitor that relies on HDMI 2.1, but if they do that, none of their current Macs have that proprietary connection. The Mac Studio could not even do it. People will have spent $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on the new Mac Studio, and then the new Pro Studio display comes out in the summer, and it's like, oh yeah, sorry, your Mac doesn't do that, which is still a bit of a bummer. The monitor must have its own setting toggle or something. Yeah, I haven't seen anyone showcase a settings toggle in watching all the Studio Display reviews this morning. So I don't know how the firmware update works, but they claim that there's an update coming. People say you update it like you update Safari through system preferences. I've never seen that before, but I guess maybe that'll happen. Mini LED version of a Studio display already being talked about after it coming out. Big F. Yeah, I mean, I think most people were well aware that, the Studio display that just launched is not meant to be the final display. It doesn't even have the Pro terminology attached to it. It's meant for the Studio, and it clearly is just a rebranded 5K iMac panel. And of course, Apple is still selling. They didn't get rid of the Pro display, which does have the higher dynamic range and the higher peak brightness. So that they clearly still care about that demographic. It's just they didn't want to announce a new monitor with the Mac Studio. So most people are saying they'll announce the new monitor with the Mac Pro, which many think will be unveiled at Quadruple UDC. I'm a little skeptical just because at the last two Quadruple UDCs, we've only gotten software and they didn't announce any hardware at 2020 or 2021. So I'm a little bit skeptical that they would announce hardware at the next one, but the last time they unveiled the Mac Pro and the Pro display was at Quadruple UDC in 2019. So that might be the time to do it. Let's see. They could have you plug in 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports for 120 hertz. Again, that's might be possible, but it doesn't sound like an Apple solution. I mean, already they include a Thunderbolt Pro cable with the Studio display, but if you wanted an additional one, that's $130. So you'd have to probably buy this $2,500, $3,000 monitor and then buy a $129 cable to use it with your MacBook Pro. And your MacBook Pro only has 3 Thunderbolt cables. So 2 of them are going to be occupied just for your external monitor? I don't know. You're going to sell Mac Studio after reviewing or use it in conjunction of your MacBook Pro? I've never once have I ever claimed I'm planning on keeping the Mac Studio. I don't know how many more times I'll have to say that, but no, I was planning on either selling it or returning it. I don't plan on keeping it. My Mac Studio is currently expected to arrive next week. So best case scenario Monday, if it doesn't get delayed again. I was kind of bummed out because when I ordered it, it said expected delivery March 18th, which is tomorrow. So I was like, okay, cool. We're going to end the week with a bang. We're going to end the week with the fastest Mac ever, unboxing, doing some speed tests, and throwing everything we can at it to see how fast it is and how much quicker I can export videos. So that's what I was looking forward to. But they pushed it back now to the 21st, and it hopefully doesn't get pushed back further. Have you considered an ultra-wide monitor? If I could find one I liked the look of. I don't like chins, I don't like logos, I don't like asymmetrical bezels, I don't like gamer aesthetics, I don't like plastic. So it's just hard to kind of find yourself a premium-looking, solid build with a clean, minimal design. You know, even when the 24-inch iMac came out last year, I was like, ugh, you just can't make what I want, can you? The studio display is pretty much the closest we've ever been to my dream display. The only problem is it's 60 hertz and it's non-HDR. So we're getting there. It's probably going to be accelerated by the A13 chip. The A13 chip is on there, but that doesn't change the fact that you connect to the monitor via Thunderbolt 4. You're still going to be limited by that connection at the end of the day. Is the studio display good for photo editing? I can't find much specs on the color spaces on the website. Basically, it's 100 nits brighter than the 5K iMac. So if you find color data or research groups talking about the 5K iMacs, the 27-inch ones, I'm guessing it's basically the exact same color palette. It's pretty much the exact same panel. I think they just boosted the brightness a little bit, but that's about it. What monitor am I going to use? Well, the studio display I'm getting tomorrow, so we should be able to unbox that for you, and I'll connect it to my MacBook Pro and use it. But my dream unicorn monitor still doesn't quite exist yet, and I'm hoping that the one that they announced at Quadruple UDC is price reasonable. You know, Ross Young is saying that this is a mini LED panel, so I expect XDR terminology. And he's saying that all their mini LED panels have been 120 hertz. So that's, for some reason, why he thinks they'll do ProMotion. I'm still wondering, like, it still can't be done over Thunderbolt 4, so they're either going to have to do 2 Thunderbolt cables or a proprietary connection. I'm not sure which. But if that monitor comes out, it's 5K, not 6K, and it's 27 inches, not 32 inches. So that, coupled with the fact that the studio display is now coming with the 24-inch iMac stand, makes me wonder, that means it's not going to be Pro Display XDR pricing, right? This thing doesn't need to be $5,000, $6,000 because it's smaller, and Mini LED has been mass-produced now at scale. You know, they put Mini LED in $1,100 iPad Pros, and they're putting it in $2,000 MacBook Pros, so getting it in a 27-inch 5K monitor means that it should be pretty decent amount cheaper, right, than the Pro Display. I don't know how much cheaper, but my dream scenario is that new display, whatever they call it, the Studio Display Pro is what Ross Young is referring to it as. And I don't know why we don't want to call it the Pro Display. Maybe because it's not 32 inches, and instead it's 27. But dream scenario is it's 120 hertz, and they let you downscale the resolution to 4K. It includes the center stage camera, and it still has the great spatial audio speakers equipped and the additional USB-C ports in the back to plug into. So that's my dream scenario, and it costs under $3,000. Like it's $2,000 or $2,500 or something like that. Then I may potentially be in the market. That sounds like something perfect for me. But in the meantime, I've enjoyed watching the unboxings of the studio display, and Your Average Consumer did a great video. Dave2D did a solid video. I'm still waiting on Marquez. He's Marquez, so he can get away with waiting. His videos will still be wonderful, I'm sure. But I like the look of it. Aside from the fact that it's a 60 hertz panel and it's non-XDR or anything, just having a clean one-size bezel all the way around that's an aluminum chassis. Oh, it looks fantastic. I think it looks great on a desk, and I'm excited to plug in all of my USB-C accessories to the back and charge my MacBook Pro while simultaneously outputting video data through a single port. That sounds amazing. Let's see. You will like the design of this more than the 24-inch iMac. Yeah, as long as it doesn't have a chin, I instantly like it more than the 24-inch iMac. And as long as it has black bezels, that's a win in my book. I really just love the display specifications of my MacBook Pro. I just want them on a bigger panel. That's really all I'm looking for, is just mini LED with 120 hertz on a bigger size. That's something that I can plug into. And yeah, it would be nice if it has a center stage camera. Did I review the Mac Pro? I don't think I was subscribed back in 2019. No, I didn't. I was not a big fan of the pricing and the specs, to the point that the base model Mac Pro, when it first came out, was like $6,000, and it was a 256 gig SSD, which is not very big, and also the GPU they included. I can't remember the name of it, but it was not a very good GPU. It was like arguably worse than the GPU in my iMac Pro at the time. So in order for me to get a hold of a Mac Pro that was of decent specification, that was actually going to outperform my iMac Pro and review that, I was going to have to spend like $8,000 to $10,000. And even if I was just reviewing it and I wasn't keeping it, it was going to be a lot of money to pull out of our checking account or put on a credit card. I don't think my Apple Card limit was that high yet. Recently they bumped up my credit limit on the Apple Card for no reason, which was kind of interesting. They were just like, "Hey, we like you. Now your credit limit has increased." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But luckily the Mac Studio, even to get the fastest version of the M1 Ultra, it was not too expensive. I believe it was only $5,000, which is not that crazy. It's still quite a bit, but it's not as bad as it could have been, I suppose. So, no, I never reviewed the Pro Display XDR or the Mac Pro just because the price was so outrageously high. It was even difficult to swing as a review unit. It was difficult to make money for. So, yeah, this will definitely be by far the fastest Mac I've ever reviewed, and the first Apple dedicated monitor that I've used in a long time. Sorry, for some reason Safari on my MacBook Pro has acted up and the chat's not loading, so I'm just bringing up the chat on my iPad. Wish I could get the iPad Mini and iPhone 12. I wish you could too, Blue Monzo. Anything is better than the 24-inch iMac. It's true. Yeah, so Richard Smith asked, just the Mac delayed Mac monitor coming tomorrow. Yes, I'll put the chat over here so that feels a bit more natural. The monitor, at least, is still scheduled to arrive tomorrow. The Mac Studio has been pushed to next week, so I don't know when exactly. Hopefully Monday. Best case scenario, it shows up on Monday. But yeah, that means I gotta wait a little bit longer. The Pro Studio display is still 27 inches. That's what Ross Young is saying. We've heard other things, like 9to5Mac sources were claiming that Apple was working on a 7K monitor. I think that's completely unnecessary. I personally think 5K is overkill. Like, I would be perfectly content if they came out with a 32-inch 4K panel, because you can do 120 hertz at 4K. That is possible with Thunderbolt 4. So I would say that's a huge win. Totally worth the compromise, because the difference between 4K and 5K is so small. But Ross Young, who I believe, because he's been the most accurate in the past, he's claiming this mini LED panel is 27 inches and 5K. I'm using my Blackmagic camera that I record my videos with. I just have it plugged into my MacBook Pro, and I'm outputting through OBS. Should the Pro Display XDR sacrifice bezel thinness for a camera and speakers? Ooh, good question, JSN. Man, I could really see myself going either way. I kind of get why they might not do it, just because it's for pros, and if it's for the pro market is likely to already have, like what I'm doing right now. I'm plugging in my Blackmagic camera and using that as a webcam. Or they have dedicated speaker setups that sound really good anyway. Which I don't know if that's the only reason that the bezels on the Studio display are thicker than the Pro display. It might have more to do with the fact that it's just a standard LCD panel that Apple's been using in their 27-inch iMacs for all these years. So the fact that it's just a repackaged panel might require the bezels to be a certain thickness, but yeah, waiting for the live stream to become 4K. Trust me, with YouTube compression, I've been live streaming for years, and I've been trying to figure out how to get these settings configured properly. with YouTube compression, live streaming at 4K is pretty dang pointless. Because of how whenever you're doing a live broadcast, there's a lot of compression going on because you're capturing and recording video and compressing it and uploading it all at the same time. You're just not going to get the same image quality that you can get from a 4K YouTube video. So I have done it. I have toyed around with live streaming at 4K. The difference is incredibly small, and most people don't have the internet for it anyway. So I could, but it's kind of a waste of time. Tim does despise me. He does. Michael Corcoran says he uses a 34-inch ultra-wide with quad HD, only paid like $300 for it. No gamer aesthetic and tiny bezels, but it's definitely plastic and budget-oriented. Yeah, I've seen those. That is kind of like my last-ditch effort if the Pro Studio display ends up being too expensive or something. I guess I could just look around for a... I know there's very cheap basic monitors that I can get that are plastic that have somewhat thin bezels, but they still have a chin and they still have a logo on the front, which is not ideal for me. But at a certain point, I gotta give it. I gotta compromise eventually. Ben Rayner says, "Is your Cam Link USB A or USB C?" Back when I was buying Cam Links, you could only get them USB A. Do they have a USB C Cam Link now? That would be nice. I wouldn't have to use this giant bulky adapter. But I haven't been in the market for a while. How do people afford all these Apple setups? They're YouTubers. The videos they make on the Apple setups pay for themselves. So that's probably how. Or they run a business. What do you think will be the Thunderbolt 5/HDMI 2.1 successor specs, and when do you think it will come out? I thought I read something about it recently. There was some talk about a new standard about DisplayPort 2.0, which could do 8K at 100 hertz or something like that. But yeah, you can imagine the linear progression and just go from 40 gigabits per second to 80 gigabits per second. Okay, sounds good. The Studio Display looks ridiculous next to Pro Display XDR. Really? I thought they kind of looked like, family. I think it's kind of impressive that it's like this setup costs $6,000. This setup costs $1,600. So you can literally get like 3 studio displays for less money, right? Let me do the math real quick. I'm a dropout, so I'm probably not a good indication. But $1,600 times 3. Yeah, you could buy 3 studio displays, and it would still be cheaper than 1 Pro Display XDR. Think about that. You'd have really clean, cool-looking setup, all these displays right next to each other for less than $5,000. Granted, they're not high refresh rate and they're not XDR, but if you're just going for like a clean symmetrical bezel with aluminum chassis and glass on the front instead of these cheap plasticky monitors and stuff, that's kind of awesome. Has universal control gotten smoother for you as time went on, or is it still buggy? No, I rebooted the iPad and it was still buggy as of this morning. I was like, oh, let me try it again, and the mouse still hangs. I move the mouse and it freezes, which is a bit annoying. Would you be excited if iPhone removed the notch? Not really. I don't see the notch as an issue. I know that Apple doesn't really utilize the top of the display very efficiently anyway. So if they removed the notch, they would probably put the carrier name up there constantly, which I don't like. And it's not a part of the display I look at very frequently anyway. So I'm fully prepared, even if the iPhone 14 got rid of the notch entirely and there was no pill hole and there was no camera cutout at all, I wouldn't upgrade. Doesn't make a difference to me. You're not going to use your phone any differently. You're going to get used to it like that. It's not a functional advantage. It's a slight aesthetic upgrade, but it's not a huge deal to me. Imagine an iPad with a notch. I honestly don't mind the notch on my MacBook Pro, to be honest. And the iPad probably shouldn't get a notch because it's the most likely to be used in multiple orientations. The MacBook Pro is always used in the same orientation. So a notch, honestly, is less intrusive on a MacBook than it is on an iPhone. The monitor is like $400 to $500. Oh, Mass Drop's vast ultra-wide monitor, 1440p, 100 hertz with pretty clean design. I just don't know how it comes in terms of accuracy. Let me check it out. Mass Drop's, what's it called? I'll look it up here. Vast ultra-wide. Let's see how clean this thing is. It's still got a logo. Or no, that's Dell. Hold on. Oh, curved. I don't want a curved monitor. It looks weird. Hey, Doctor. That's a fun name. Dr. Funkenstein. Thank you for the super chat. Pretty appreciate that. Yeah, the bezels are white on this thing. What the heck? I do not want gray bezels. Sorry, I'm not into the ultra wide stuff or the curved stuff. It just doesn't look good to me. I know there are very cheap monitors out there, but they're not even black bezels. Ugh, that looks disgusting. QD OLED ultra wides. I've looked at them. They're, again, you got to compromise somewhere. It's always like, oh, it's got to have this chin or it's got to have these bezels, but reviewers are disappointed on the quality of the webcam. Yeah, I talked about that at the beginning of the stream. I'm disappointed to see that because I think the webcam was probably the most interesting part of this display because I was not anticipating them to add center stage, but the fact that I might be able to have center stage on my Mac now, that was probably the one thing I was missing from this new MacBook Pro when I got it last year. So I was like, man, they should have put center stage on this, but they didn't. So I was excited to see that I can now tether a monitor to my Mac and have that, and I'm hoping that firmware update comes soon. Yeah, I've read about Eve Spectrum as well. The monitor is clean and it has HDMI 2.1, but the company is unreliable with shipping things, and I've heard lots of quality control issues as well, so kind of sucks. Didn't know it had a logo, plus anything ultra-wide is going to probably be curved over 29 inches. Got to go for something else. I've tried ultra-wide, I've tried ultra-wides, and I've tried curved, and I noticed the distortion. It just feels weird. And this one, how dare you recommend to me a monitor that doesn't have black bezels? I'm offended. How fast is the SD card reader in the MacBook Pro versus Mac Studio? I believe they're both SDXC, so I don't think there's a difference there. I think there is, however, a faster version of the SD card slot, but Apple is just not adopting it for some reason. I wish they would. Let's see. I was hoping iPhone SE3 would get an OLED display because the LCD is becoming old. Well, I have a video coming up shortly about that. Basically, that the monitor, the iPhone SE you want already exists. It's called the 12 mini, but I'll talk about that later. Hopefully the SE4 gets a redesign. I think the SE is intentionally ugly. It has to be boring. That's why it's cheap. If you want it to not be boring and you want it to have a new design, then that's going to drive the price up, in which case those phones already exist. I would be happy if iPhone 14 had a Super AMOLED display and 100x zoom. So basically, if Samsung made it. Super AMOLED is basically just Samsung marketing lingo. I use mine upside down sometimes and never realized it. Really? The iPad? I guess you would definitely notice if the iPad had a notch, which orientation you were holding it in. So Apple probably doesn't like that 100x zoom. I want to know how many times people are doing zooms on their phone that much. Like, if you're trying to take a picture of the moon with your phone, the image is always going to be not that great. Like, sure, the Galaxy S22 Ultra, you can see a little bit more of the moon. But if you're doing lunar photography, it's really better off with a dedicated camera. I want to try the Opal Webcam, but it's still sort of beta. You have to wait on a waiting list until they think it is worth them to send you one. Yeah, I've looked into a few startup companies' webcams that use like higher end sensors, and they have software and stuff built into them to do center stage like features, but they all are trying to like, well, I get it, they're a business, but they all want to like come up with a monthly membership thing where it's like, to unlock these features you got to pay this much a month, and I wasn't interested in that. I want it to be baked in. I don't like those big bulky monitors. I don't like the look of those big bulky webcams sitting on top of your monitor. I always thought that look was kind of tacky. So that's what I'm kind of excited for with the studio displays, having a center stage camera built in and the speaker system and additional I/O all in one. Just that really supports my clean, minimalist aesthetic preferences. Trying to take the moon with my 300x telephoto still isn't great. Yeah. It's like you're not getting a great shot of the moon regardless of what smartphone camera you're using. Just use a telescope instead of space zoom. I get way better photos on a 10s with no night mode than any other. Yeah. It's like the moon basically looks the same in pretty much all the pictures. It's not like sometimes the moon looks like this and other times it looks like this. It's like, the moon's been there. It'll keep being there. The new QD OLED monitors, I thought I looked them up earlier. Let me double check. They weren't. Yeah, most of. Let's see. Are you talking about the Alienware one? Yeah, we looked at this in a different monitor. It has a giant chin. It has a giant logo. It has the stupid gamer aesthetic. I like the thin bezels on the sides and the top, but the chin just completely butchers it for me. So not my style, not my thing. I also don't like curved monitors personally. The power cable isn't removable on the display, right? Well, Dave 2D said that he didn't want to remove his because it felt very solid and secure in there, but I thought someone else said that it is removable. It's just kind of like the HomePod, the original HomePod power cable is like, it's really in there. You're not really meant to unplug it, but if you pull hard enough, it will come out. Reject startup webcams, embrace Microsoft to connect. There you go. So I'm not exactly sure if it's removable, but it definitely doesn't seem like they want people to remove it. At least based on the videos and reviews I've seen so far, it's plugged in by default, and a reasonable amount of force is going to be required to unplug it if you need it. Let's see. I have 8 VESA arms for 6 monitors. Wow. Jeez, Craig. A laptop holder and a mic with a VESA adapter. Keep everything off the desk. Having the speakers off the desk, the monitor sound hopefully will be good enough. From what I've heard of the early impressions, spatial audio on the monitor sounds legit. Like, I'm very excited to have speakers coming out, not just the bottom, but the top as well. I don't know if I've ever seen Apple do that before. But yeah, I like that as well, because the speakers on my MacBook Pro are good, but obviously not as good as a dedicated desktop speaker system would be. Imagine what the earliest humans thought of the moon, having no idea what it was. They probably thought it was just the sun taking a break, you know? The sun can't stay that bright all the time. I don't know, they probably weren't thinking about it. They were probably thinking, let's let's find some food. If the iPhone SE isn't going to be getting a redesign, then there's no point in upgrading, in my opinion. At least I'll stick with my iPhone SE2. I don't think Apple was trying to convince people with the SE2. If you go back and watch the event, they kept comparing the SE3 to the iPhone 8, the 7, and the 6. They never once compared the SE3 to the SE2. I don't think their belief is you need to upgrade your phone every 2 years or 3 years. They're kind of openly advocating for everyone who hasn't upgraded yet. Let's move on. Let's move forward. If the iPhone is... Oh, sorry, I just read that. But yeah, sorry, we don't talk about political and, you know, real life world events on this channel. This is a tech channel, so that's what we specify on. But yes, we do support Ukraine and all that, of course. We're just trying to keep tech to tech best we can. Because that's what this channel is. It's not a news channel. It's not a world news channel, and there's always bad things going on, which sucks. But we can't dwell on the bad news and the negative stuff constantly. It also helps to look elsewhere when people want an escape or want to find take a break of all the real world pain that's going on and just talk about tech. That's what I'm trying to be. So that's what I'm focusing on today. Anyway, Peter says, do you think the iPhone 14 Pro will be more like S year? What more can they add? I think, honestly, all iPhone upgrades from here on out are going to be mostly S years. Because the definition of a full number upgrade is kind of vague at this point. Because the iPhone 12 to 13, I thought, was kind of an S year. It wasn't really a huge redesign. It was mostly spec upgrades. But Apple called that a 13. So I would have called that the 12S, honestly, but they didn't want to do that. And they're calling it the 14 probably because they realized that we're going to keep reusing a lot of the same designs, and there's only so much tinkering you can provide to each chassis. So it kind of varies on your definition. Like the aesthetic upgrades are rumored to be, instead of a notch, it's now a camera hole cutout. So is that a big deal for some people, or is that a minor upgrade? To me, that's fairly minor. So I consider all iPhone upgrades S upgrades at this point, but Apple's going to call them all 14, 15, and whatnot because they want it to feel like a major upgrade. They don't want people thinking this is an S year. Um, let's see. I noticed a lot of people into tech are also into cosmology and space. I guess that makes sense. A lot of companies market it accordingly. Well, it overlaps. There's a lot of technology involved in space, and that's where a lot of innovation goes on, and a lot of computer engineering goes on. So it makes sense. There's a lot of technology that was heavily accelerated by space programs, so they kind of go hand in hand. They're not directly correlated with smartphones and laptops and stuff, but yeah, there's some overlap there. Scott says, I know people who are diehard home button fans and refuse to give it up. I think that's what the SE is basically for. That's the target demographic, is diehard home button fans. But there are options if you want a iPhone SE that got a design upgrade. And I'll talk about that when the live stream is over in the next video. Let's see. Apple is probably making a Tailosive Tech Special Edition with 120 hertz, so it's delayed. let's hope that's the situation. I would very much prefer that. I got the iPhone SE 2020 at a discount. With that price difference with the 12 mini was nearly $400. I don't think that amount was worth for what the 12 mini provided more. Yeah, I can understand that. Everyday consumers are not going to probably care that much about those types of features, especially if they're coming from an iPhone 6 or 7 or 8. They're not going to think about those things. But yeah, it's not necessarily about one feature being better than the other. They're just kind of different, you know. Some people like the full screen displays. Some people like the dual cameras, and some people like the home button, and some people like Touch ID. And it's just about options, really. It's about drive. Can't wait for the honest Mac Studio reviews by people who actually purchased them. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think most of the embargo reviews are still fairly honest because, as far as I can tell, Apple doesn't make it so that people don't complain. Like, they're not saying, like, you got to sign this contract that says you can't mention certain things, because there was a decent amount of complaining I watched in the videos of people saying, like, hey, this webcam isn't very good, and I don't really like the quality of the center stage camera, and I think Dave2D was mentioning how overkill this is, and how, like, probably very few people need the M1 Ultra. It's so absurdly fast, it's not worth the money. So it's not like scripted by Apple that they have to say certain things. At least, I don't know. I haven't seen the contract. Maybe Apple does require them to say certain things, but they seem pretty honest. I don't think the genuine audience reviews versus the embargo reviews are going to be that different, to be frank. Today is the day. This is a monitor, and this is for Drew. Good morning! Good morning, Tailosive Tech. We have designed a monitor just for you. Is the HomePod Mini worth it? I'm sorry if I already mentioned this in a stream. Thank you, Austin Felt. Yeah, it's a decent value. If you're a big Apple Music fan, I would say yes. I'm still kind of annoyed that HomePods can't connect via Bluetooth, and they have to do everything over AirPlay. Because if they could connect over Bluetooth, I could actually use them with my Mac and have, like, dedicated pair of speakers. Because the latency wouldn't be that bad. But AirPlay latency is really bad. It's, like, unusable. So I guess if you like listening to music, the HomePod Mini is fantastic sound quality for the size it is, but it's been out for a while, so I would just say look around for a sale. Try to find it refurbished or used, because it doesn't have a display. It doesn't have a battery. You don't need to worry about, oh, I'm not the first owner of my HomePod Mini. It's like, you could pick up a used pair for $80, and it'll still sound great. As long as it functionally works, it doesn't matter. Have you ever requested getting review units? You can't. There's no process, or there's no form you fill out to say, hey, I'm a YouTuber, I would like review units. They come to you. You don't go to them. They will approach you, and they will ask you if they want you to review stuff. There's nothing really you can do about it. My running theory is either that Apple has enough people on the review unit embargo list that they don't really have much interest in expanding it. But the far more likely scenario is that all the channels that do the review embargoes and get products early and stuff, all those channels are fairly high production value, and they have high quality cameras and lighting and stuff, and Apple probably likes the way they make their products look because they have really nice setups and really fancy lenses and stuff. And I'm just not that kind of guy. I just kind of film stuff with a basic camera, and I'll live stream off my phone, and I just don't have very high production value. So they probably don't think my channel will highlight, or I'm kind of crazy and they don't like my ranting and how much I talk about leaks and things I wish it could do. So I'm kind of just a loose cannon. They probably don't think I associate very well with their brand identity. And I'm not willing to spend a bunch of money on fancy camera equipment and lenses just so that there's a chance, maybe if I spend thousands of dollars on equipment, they might include me on the review unit list. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a risky gamble. That's okay. I would love to review them early if they allowed for it, but I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're interested. Let's see. I don't think it's overkill. It's barely double the power of a MacBook. No, I mean, most MacBooks have M1 chips. Let's be clear on that. 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, most of them are shipping with M1 Pros. A lot of people buying the binned M1 Pros. And then some people are willing to shell out $3,000 for an M1 Max. And the M1 Ultra is literally faster than the $50,000 Mac Pro. The number of people that utilized the speed of the $50,000 Mac Pro, pretty far and few between. Very few people actually utilize that power. So yes, for the vast majority of people, the M1 Ultra is still quite overkill. The percentage of the market that needs performance that fast is very, very small. Do you have to apply to be on the review unit list? No, you don't. There's no application. There's nothing you request or anything. You wait for them to contact you. If they like your brand and they like your channel, they'll reach out to you. From the people I've talked to that do get the review units, that's the conversations we've had. Is just like, yep, if they want to do it, they'll let you know. You don't get to email that. You don't email Tim or email Craig and say, hey, can I get some review units? And they go, oh, okay. I'm absolutely shocked of all the hatred for the discontinuation of the 27-inch iMac, as if the new mini LED 120Hz M1 Ultra one was going to still be $2,000. I don't think everyone was saying it was going to be M1 Ultra, but maybe start at M1 Max. I was expecting a little bit over $2,000, but mini LED is a much cheaper technology than the custom drivers they came up with for the Pro display. So I didn't see that as too far a stretch. Scott says my binned M1 Pro gets over 10,000 multi-core on Geekbench. I don't think I'll ever need that much power. Yeah, I don't think most people will either. The M1 is perfect for probably 80-90% of computer buyers, but M1 Pro, even less of a market, even M1 Max, even less, M1 Ultra, a tiny sliver. So we're talking about a very, very niche demographic of people that will utilize that kind of power. Felix says they're also fairly biased towards video production. Didn't see any comparison for software development. Well, I don't know. The people in software development might be less likely to talk about stuff on YouTube. All the YouTubers that are posting videos happen to do a lot of video production. I'm surprised it works that way. But people that are dedicated software engineers might not be as interested in posting their content on video and making full-time video production. So... but I saw some Geekbench tests and Cinebench tests and stuff that was more related to software, not just video. Drew has to like the 24-inch iMac before they let him get review units. It's in the contract. Oh, see, that would never happen. I think Apple, at least from sources I've talked to, Apple is at least aware of my channel. They're like relatively aware of Tailosive Tech's existence, but... they see my rants, they see me complain, and they see me talk about leak videos, and they see me talk about what iPhones and iPads you shouldn't buy, and they see me complain about iPadOS, and they're like, okay, this guy kind of wild card when it comes to liking Apple. So they know they don't need to send me review units because I'm going to talk about what they come out with anyway. Yeah, the M1 Ultra is for Marquez, exactly. If I had a mini LED XDR 120Hz display, new enclosure in the Max Ultra, it would have started at least $3,500. If it's the Ultra, yes, it would be well over $4,000. Because currently, to get even the binned cheap Ultra, it's $4,000 with no display or keyboard of any kind. That's just a box with an M1 Ultra. That's $4,000. But the iMac Pro that was rumored to have come out in March that we were talking about last year, everyone was saying that one was going to have M1 Pro, M1 Max. So basically just the same silicon that came with the MacBook Pros. Later on, people said, oh, maybe it'll start with the M1 Max and have a dual M1 Max option. But yeah, that Ultra chip would definitely be more than the like $5,000, $6,000 price point. I did watch some early reviews, yes. Which one did I like the most? I thought Dave2D did a really solid job of all the ones I watched. I didn't watch a ton, but I kind of go around and watch a bunch of YouTubers whenever a couple YouTubers at least. It gets old fairly quick. After you watch like 2 of those review unit videos, you're like, okay, I get it. But I watch your average consumer, Dave2D, and usually MKBHD, but he's taking his time. Apple did show the podcast for a split second in the iPhone keynote. Yeah, I remember that. I think that was the last in-person keynote. September 2019. That was the last keynote that wasn't virtual. Yeah, and we were in it. Wow, what an important memory. Software developer without a YouTube channel here, although unfortunately my company does development work on PCs. Well, once people get a hold of the M1 Ultra, yeah, I mean, you're typing this, you technically have a YouTube channel, but yeah, we're all waiting on Marquez. He's in my opinion, the best tech channel, but that's just my opinion. Would you recommend most people to wait until the entire M1 lineup is fully realized before making a big purchasing decision? Obviously, not everyone can afford to wait. I've always said when it comes to like when should I buy or should I wait, it's always comes down to like what is your current setup. If your current setup you can live with, if you're fine with your current setup, then there will always be better stuff coming around the corner. You could wait 1 year, you could wait 3 years. The market will be better in another year. There will be cheaper options, there will be sales, there will be faster options and better tiers of silicon to choose from in a year or 3 years. You could be waiting forever if you're waiting for just faster and faster. But the question ultimately comes down to, when is your current setup holding you back so much that you're ready to upgrade because you're tired of dealing with Intel, or you're tired with dealing with bad I/O, or your port selection isn't good enough. It's not, overkill is subjective. I know some people are saying M1 Ultra is so overkill. It depends on what your use case is. There are certain demographics of people where the M1 Ultra is going to be super useful and super helpful. And certain demographics, like, you know, my mom, for example. My mother does not need the M1 Ultra chip because she doesn't do high-intensive computing. She uses her computer for web browsing and FaceTime and social media and watching YouTube videos. So no, of course, the M1 Ultra is overkill for someone like that. For someone like MKBHD, who's routinely editing 8K red footage or red raw footage, and they're doing a bunch of work on very high bitrate, very high resolution videos, for them, the M1 Ultra is not overkill. That's appropriate, if anything. That's going to be helpful, and they're going to justify that purchase and make good use out of that purchase. So it's like a spectrum. You'll never have the latest if you wait. Well, you'll always get the latest if you buy the newest thing when it comes out, but it won't be the latest forever, of course. I mostly just watch MKBHD. Because I spend so much of my time, I do live streaming with tech content, and I make tech videos all the time, and I'm doing tech podcasts. I'm kind of constantly talking about tech, so I don't spend a lot of my free time watching tech videos. But the one channel I pretty much always try to watch is Marquez. I'm imagining Drew's mother editing 18 streams of 8K raw. Yep, that's her. Sounds like mom. The chip in the Mac Pro will be called MKBHD. Oh, I like that. No one's made that joke yet. That's awesome. Introducing the MKBHD chip. We're going to need to call it the MKBUHD. What will it take to get you to buy the iPhone 14 Pro Max? I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. I think the one scenario someone pitched is that if Apple comes out with a futuristic pair of AR glasses, not a headset. I'm not interested in the VR headset thing. I'm not something that you can only wear in the living room and just do some VR games with. I don't care about that. But if they came out with the augmented reality glasses that are just a light pair of glasses that you can wear in public and you can wear them while driving and everything, and they have holographic technology, and you know, they can paste things on all the walls. There's a brand new product category from Apple And the only way these glasses will work is if you have the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Then I would probably get it and keep it. But that's the only scenario I can think of. And that's kind of a cheat answer because it's like, well, if I'm required to get an iPhone 14 to review a brand new product category, then I'll probably get it. But I don't think that's going to happen. Like when the Apple Watch came out, it still worked with a 3-year-old iPhone at the time. So, and I don't think the AR glasses are coming out this year. I think there's a lot of chit chat going on around the headset, but that's not glasses. It's like it's going to be basically VR goggles that probably have some lidar sensors and cameras, but I am not terribly interested in reviewing that because I think it's more of a living room Apple Arcade demo thing. It's not something I would use very often, and I don't see myself finding much use cases for just a VR gaming rig. I've tried VR headsets in the past, and I'm sure Apple could probably design the thinnest, lightest, most high resolution, high frame rate VR headset, but I don't have a use for it, and I personally don't think that'll require an iPhone 14 either. So it's funny. Everyone keeps saying, "Oh, Drew, I know he's gonna buy it and keep it." I've always said I'll review it. That's never changed from the beginning. I said, "Yeah, I'll review the iPhone 14, but I have no plans on keeping it." And I look forward to proving you all wrong. Have you ever considered the iPhone upgrade program? I have. I've done the math. It's not worth it if you can sell your old iPhone for a decent amount, which is what I've typically done. I'll buy my iPhone when it comes out. When it's time for me to upgrade, I'll buy a new one, and then I sell my old one, and I recoup more of the cost. In the iPhone upgrade program, I would end up losing more money. Um, and I don't really plan on, at this point, I don't want to upgrade my iPhone to the latest version every year because I think the differences are getting so small and so hard to notice that this phone is already pretty dang overkill and gets the job done for me. I love the battery life. I love the 120 hertz. I love the cameras. There's nothing about it that I really could see myself spending money to upgrade for. So I looked into the upgrade program. It's not really that good a deal. If you're the type of person that doesn't mind trying to find a buyer for your old iPhone. If you can use it to make your money back, buy it. If not, then what you have is probably good enough. Let's see. It's probably better for you to avoid too many tech channels, better to develop your opinions outside of conventional wisdom to the extent possible. Yeah, I mean, it's also just less interesting because I do formulate my opinion. I mean, I read the news. I check with Mac Rumors and 9 to 5 Mac and all those news sites, and I get a lot of my information from Twitter and, what leakers say. And I read about what's going on in the tech space and develop my opinion based on the news and who I believe and who I don't believe. But as far as other channels go, no, it's mostly just a lot of channels are just people regurgitating the news, just kind of repeating what is already in tech specs. Like, this has this port, this has this port. And I'm like, yeah, I already know. There's a lot of channels that just like to read the tech specs off. This one is 10.9 inches. This one is 11. This one is this. This one is this. It's like, okay. I know all this. I have a bizarrely good memory when it comes to tech specs. Which is funny because I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, and I'll forget crucial memories of my childhood. And my sister will tell me, "Remember when we did this?" And I'm like, "No, I don't remember that at all." But I have all these resolutions and refresh rates and price points down to the point people will be like, "How much is this? And how much is this?" And I consider my brain kind of optimized for buying guides. Like, this is when you should buy this. This is when you shouldn't buy this. You can get a good deal on this. You can find this for refurbished, and that's what my memory keeps up with. Apparently, there's no way to open the Mac Studio. Oh, there's a way. There's just not an easy way. I'm sure someone will open it. Tim R says, highly doubt some stupid VR glasses from Apple. They haven't put any effort into VR, only AR. It just wouldn't make sense. Well, no one's calling it VR goggles, to be fair. Everyone's calling it a mixed reality headset. I think that's stupid. I think it's either VR or AR. And what everyone is describing is a VR headset with some AR features. There's all these rumors and leakers and analysts claiming that Apple's working on this headset that's not glasses. It's like it covers your eyes. It has a display. And then maybe there's some ultra-wide cameras on the outside. and those ultra-wide cameras show you what's going on, so you can still see even though you have a headset on, and then they put AR stuff on top of what you're looking at. But to me, that's still VR. VR is when you can't see through the headset physically. It's just, they call it mixed reality, but I still call it VR because you're looking at a display. If you're looking at a display that's not transparent, then it's, yeah, people got to break out the welding torch. Exactly. If they made the AR glasses, would they match your prescription if you wear glasses? I assume so. Tim Cook wears glasses, so I'd be very surprised if they were like, no, it only works on people with perfect vision. Bye, Shyler. Thanks for tuning in. Variety of sources and opinions are cool. Yeah, I agree. Someone should tell these YouTube channels that we all know how to search for specs on GSM Arena. I don't even look at that. I just typically remember the specs when they unveil them. I watch the event and I play with the website and I play with the configurator and I'm like, okay, the height adjustable stand is $400. The nano texture glass option is $300. I do think it's kind of funny that MKBHD, in his video recapping the event, he was complaining about how expensive the studio display options were. He was like, it's an extra $300 to get the nano textured option, and it's an extra $400 to get the height adjustable option. And I was like, Marquez, didn't you spend $2,000 on Pro stands? Like, granted, sure, it's not the cheapest monitor in the world, but this is substantially cheaper than the last one they came out with. The one you bought two of. He bought two Pro displays and two Pro stands. So he spent $12,000 on his monitors, and before, the nano textured glass option was a $1,000 add-on. And on the 27-inch iMac, when they brought it to the 5K iMac, it was a $500 add-on. So they reduced it from being a $1,000 add-on to a $500 add-on to now a $300 add-on. We're still like, oh my god, it's an extra $300? It's like, I get that it's high-end, but let's try to speak relatively here. For the same reason, people are like, okay, the M1 Ultra starts at $4,000, but everyone always follows that up with, that's actually really good. We're not saying a $4,000 computer is cheap or budget. We're just saying for what you get for $4,000, that's a very powerful machine. Far cheaper than all the Mac Pros that it's beating out. So I thought it was just kind of a weird thing to complain about when you've already yourself spent that much money. Yeah, the Ultrafine 5K did have a webcam, but there's, I guess, software issues with the current studio display camera, so I hope they fix that soon. How many gigahertz is the M1 Ultra? You have 10 seconds. I don't think that's measured in gigahertz anymore. It's kind of a unnecessary. That metric doesn't really mean much. You can have high gigahertz on old CPUs that are slower than new CPUs with low gigahertz. I'm glad we're not using that terminology anymore. Dave 2D makes really beautiful videos, and he says the Mac Studio is an overkill even for him, so it's probably an overkill for most of us. I agree. M1 Max is plenty fast for my workflow. I have not been editing videos with my MacBook Pro and been like, man, I wish this was faster. So to me, the amount of time it saves doesn't justify the additional cost. So that combined with us wanting to travel more and work away from home, so I want a machine that's mobile. And sure, the Mac Studio is a bit more portable than a Mac Pro, and it's probably more portable than an iMac, but the MacBook Pro has a battery, has a display, so that it's definitely more portable. I can be assured it will run cool most of the time I use it. Yeah, definitely it'll run cool. Jared Jackson says, to me, it is better for them to have lower starting price and less options than having all the options as standard and it be way more expensive out of the gate. Yeah, no, I agree. It's good to have the lower end options if possible. Because I know a ton of people that don't need a height adjustable monitor and don't need the nano textured glass. So yeah, if they made that kind of feature required, this would be a $2,000 monitor. But because they didn't make it standard, it's a $1,600 monitor, which is fine. The reason why MKBHD said that, because the monitor has the same specs as the LG monitor they sold. Right, but the LG monitor never had a height adjustable option or a nano texture glass option. I'm saying those two options used to be exclusive to the Pro Display, and with the Pro Display, they were $1,000 each. Now they're $700 combined, which is quite a bit less. So for the same reason people don't think the M1 Ultra is overpriced, I haven't seen anyone describe the Mac Studio as overpriced. Yeah, it's expensive, but relative to the performance you get, it's way faster. So for the same reason, I would say a monitor that's 27 inches, it's cheaper to get the nano texture now than it ever has been. And it's cheaper to get an Apple monitor with height adjustability than it's ever been. It's never been this cheap before. $300 in Marquez world would be $40 in my house. Nothing for his wallet. Yeah, it's just thought it was kind of funny. I'm not keeping the Mac Studio, no. But I am excited to do speed tests because I do plan on using the Mac Studio as my daily Mac editing rig for the review period I have it, for a couple weeks at least. I'll edit all my videos on it and see how much time it saves. Your brain really is an Apple encyclopedia. It's crazy. It is. It's kind of depressing. It's kind of sad how much information up there is just dedicated to Apple knowledge. But this is my job. This is what I do for a living. So when you spend this much time talking about Apple and tech stuff, your brain will probably hold on to it a bit more. Here at least I get a very good quality VESA stand and put it in the desk through a drilled hole, and the VESA mount is a $0 upgrade, so a VESA mount costs me less than $50. That's true. That's worth it. Apple could make a 16K OLED $40,000 reference monitor, and Marquez would probably buy it. Yeah, I think he could probably make that money back on the video alone. So not bad. Good. You wait for the Mac Pro, right? No, I'm not in the market for a Mac. I'm just reviewing these for the channel. If I did not have a YouTube channel, well, for one, I probably wouldn't have bought this MacBook Pro. But the current M1 Max MacBook Pro I got is wonderful. I love the display. I love the battery life. And the performance is plenty for my needs. I don't think people can really grasp. Like, the only people who should be buying M1 Ultra and higher, whatever the Mac Pro is rocking, are people editing 8K raw footage frequently. And I'm not shooting videos in 8K. All my videos are 4K at 60, which M1 Max handles plenty fine. Honestly, you could probably make the argument that the M1 Max is overkill for my needs, but the truth is I edit a lot of videos. I'm typically editing 2, sometimes 3 videos a day, all of which are filmed and edited at 4K 60 frames a second. So having a computer that can export those videos fairly quickly is very useful. I think 8K is completely overkill for anything you put on YouTube because YouTube compresses everything so much. You're not going to notice a huge difference between someone shooting in 4K and 8K. Really, it's very hard. You'd have to have the internet for it, and you have to have the display for it. And most people watch YouTube on their phone. So I've made the argument many times that I think 4K on YouTube is already kind of overkill because most people do not watch YouTube at 4K. Most people watch it 1080p. So I consider myself filming and editing at 4K as like I cover the vast majority of instances. The fact that even if you're watching me on a 4K TV, you can go up to that resolution, that's plenty. That's covering 99.99% of viewers. The 8K is like a fraction of a percent. If your name is Disney or Universal, then the Mac Pro is for you. Exactly. It's just insane. It's just an insanely small demographic of people that will actually appreciate 8K. And that's what the M1 Ultra is decent for. Or if you're doing 3D modeling software and you need all that local RAM. But I'm not doing that. I'm very much just interested in live streaming and video editing, which, because I'm interested in audio quality of built-in microphones and I like having clean setups that I can take with me, I appreciate things like the studio quality mics. I'm using the microphone on my MacBook Pro right now, and I think it sounds great, and that means that it's much, much easier for me to live stream on the go because I don't have to carry around a dedicated microphone all the time. So that's why I'm excited for things like the studio display, because I can use the center stage camera, I can use the dedicated speakers, and I can use the studio quality mics and that kind of stuff. 8K is more for digital zoom. Still, I mean, I could argue 4K in digital zoom so that you preserve, even when you crop in the video to 1080p, YouTube is probably not going to notice that loss in quality because of how much compression goes on on YouTube's end. You can have really, really high bitrate YouTube files, and then you put them up on YouTube, and YouTube's like the steamroller. It's just it squishes all that quality. So if you're making content for Netflix maybe, or for movie studios, or a movie that's going to be on a big screen, that's when 8K starts to make a difference. But if you're just posting YouTube videos, no, it's very, very hard to tell. It's a lot of extra work. It's going to take up extra storage. It's going to mean the upload takes longer, the export takes longer. You're going to have to buy bigger SSDs and more local storage and more server space. So yeah, I think people should be far more concerned with their audio quality than their video quality, especially after 4K. I prioritize audio quality when it comes to videos because I listen to some of it, videos like a podcast once in a while. Yeah, it's true. You'd be surprised how much audio should come first for the most part. Let's see. Okay. Ordered on launch day, the original ETA was 18th, but now it's 22nd. Yeah, okay. The same thing happened to me as a Hi-Fi Insider. Yeah, I ordered right away. I ordered as quickly as I could, and then today it was like, your order has shipped, and it won't get there until next week. Do you return the review products? Does Apple frown on the many returns you make? Not yet. They are completely allowed to turn off the return policy on an account basis. Best Buy does that. Amazon has done that. They are allowed to just say, hey, you've returned too many items. We're cutting off the return policy. And I would fully accept that. I would not complain one bit. If Apple doesn't want me to do it anymore, they can just ask, and I'll honor that. I think that happened with Amazon a long time ago. I was reviewing Android phones and some tech way back in the attic days. I would buy things on Amazon and return them, and Amazon was like, hey, you've been returning a lot of things, and if you keep this up, we're going to turn off your return window. So I said, okay, I won't do that anymore. And so far, Apple has never asked me to stop. It doesn't really hurt them very much because, I'm covering the product for free. They're not paying for me, and I'm talking about my experience. And I'm sure I've sold tons of you guys on iPhones or MacBooks or iPads, and you've been like, hey, that's a good deal, or I should do that. So I'm free marketing for them. And when I return it, they refurbish it or use it for parts or repair unit, or, they don't just throw it in the garbage. So it's not like they lose all their money by me returning it. And because if there's no battery in it or there's no long-term damage to it, they can probably repackage it and sell it again. So I don't think it's a big deal for them. If they ask me to stop doing it, I'll stop doing it. But so far they haven't. Big YouTubers want to future-proof their videos. What's the point of 8K? It's mostly a flex. Very few YouTubers actually upload or do anything with 8K. I guess it's about trying to preserve future-proof, but I don't think there's that many people watching iPhone 8 Plus unboxing videos in 2022. Like, technology ages so quickly. There's not a very large demographic for shelf life on tech content, to be honest. Like, yeah, we'll all watch iPhone SE3 unboxing videos now, but then 5 years from now, is anybody going to care? Is anybody going to be watching iPhone SE3 and be like, oh, dang, this YouTuber only uploaded in 4K instead of 8K. Now I can't watch the SE3 unboxing at full res in 2030. I don't think that's a common example. There's not that much shelf life on most of these tech videos. They're very relevant for a few months, and then as time goes on, less and less people watch them. And 10 years from now, no one's going to be watching these videos. Very few people will. So I don't see the point in trying to preserve these unboxings or reviews of like, we need to preserve every last pixel so that when I watch the iPhone 6 unboxing in 2014, it looks as good as humanly possible. It's mostly just because they can, and they get, they can unbox a camera, or they can unbox a high-end computer, and the video of the unboxing will generate so much revenue that it pays for the computer itself. So they probably lose money by not buying the expensive equipment. And they lose money by not getting super expensive cameras and fancy equipment because The video content they get out of that pays for itself. So it's an investment. It's a tax write-off for them. They get to write it off as a business expense. So I get why they do it. It's just to act like it's important, or younger channels that don't make as much should try to get to that point. You should really try to up it to 8K. It's like if you're not making thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars per video, then no, it's not worth it at all. Hi-Fi Insider says, any plans to get XDR display? Sam from my update caved and bought one recently. Will you also cave in? No, I don't. I still don't like the price, and I don't like that it's 60 hertz. I'm already disappointed that the studio display is 60 hertz, and I don't really care that much about extreme dynamic range, to be frank. At this point, if I could only choose one, I would choose the studio display, because I like the center stage camera, I like the built-in speakers, and the Pro Display XDR doesn't have that. Even if they were the same price, even if you were like, I'll give you one of these for free, which one do you want? And you can't resell them. I would take the studio display, because I would use the camera and I would use the built-in speakers. XDR, kind of overrated in my opinion. Like, it's kind of nice to have when you're watching content in HDR, but there's not a lot of content in HDR in the first place. So I'm not caving. That's way too expensive of a monitor in my opinion, and it's very dated. It's been around since 2019, and the price has not gone down. I don't want a VESA mount either, so I would have to spend $6,000 on the whole setup. It's not worth it to me. I want a high refresh rate monitor first and foremost. I would be completely sold, no question, on the studio display if it had 120 hertz. This discussion would be over. I'd be like, done, sold, I'm buying it, that's my monitor. The only reason I'm not completely sold on it is just because of the 60 hertz. Tax write-offs don't make those people rich. No, but they're going to have to pay taxes anyway. So if they would rather have equipment that they can use instead of just paying taxes. So it doesn't make them rich, but they got to spend the money on something. If it's taxes or monitor, what would you rather have? When do I stream on Tailosive EV? Every Wednesday. So I just did one yesterday, and I'll do another one next week. I'm debating if I should up that, though. I do 2 tech streams, sometimes 3 a week on tech, but I like doing EV streams, so I might end up doing more of those in the future. If I did compute like many years ago, it would be worth it. I killed my Mac Pro 2008 computer on 8 cores with 2 chips, 24/7 for 6 months until it went a wee bit crazy. Oh my god. Alberto says, I've actually been binging some old Tailosive Tech videos for nostalgia. Well, see, you can do that, and you're enjoying it, and you're fine with it. Do you care that the old videos aren't 4K? No, you're not thinking about that. It's old. It's nostalgia. For the same reason, like when you go back and watch an old 80s movie or old family videos from the early 2000s, you don't really care that it wasn't shot at 60 frames a second or 4K, because you're on a trip down memory lane. You're kind of getting into the mood of, oh, this is old footage. This is, nostalgic. No 120 hertz because the input is T3 for backwards compatibility with Intel Mac. I believe it's still Thunderbolt 4, but yeah, even Thunderbolt 4 can't handle that. There's not a port currently that Apple makes that can handle... Well, they could have done HDMI 2.1, but that's about it. I've got a full M1 Mac Studio with 32 gigs of memory and a 1 terabyte SSD on order. Excited. Congrats, Max Herman. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it works well for you. I'm going to be waiting till next week for mine, but I'm hoping to see some impressive export speeds. I watch your older videos just to see how far you've gone. Well, thanks, Barnjell. I appreciate it. Or how far I've gone down in quality. It's like, remember when Drew used to be funny? Not anymore. The enjoyment is the most important part, exactly. So the video's entertaining. It doesn't really matter what the resolution of the video is. As long as it's watchable and you can hear it. HDMI in their monitors, I don't think they would revert to that. I don't either. I think it would look too weird, but Apple technically ships HDMI 2.1 on the Apple TV, which is funny, but they don't put HDMI 2.1 on the MacBook Pros or the Mac Studio, which are far more expensive. T4 is T3 with more requirements that Apple already implemented as part of T3, no more bandwidth. Right. Yeah, I know. They don't have the port for 120 hertz at this point. So what they might potentially do, because Ross Young is saying every mini LED panel Apple makes is ProMotion. So he's fairly convinced that there is a 27-inch 5K mini LED ProMotion display coming out in June. It might not be 5K at 120, but if you plug it in via Thunderbolt and go into display settings and say you want ProMotion, they could scale it to 4K. If that's true, I'm sold. I would love that. I would very much be happy with 4K on a 27-inch monitor. I don't need 5K at all. It's completely overkill. Um, I don't. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm not really caring too much about the panel itself. I mostly care about the design. If you didn't care about the design of the monitor, there are far cheap. You can get dirt cheap 4K monitors these days that have decent panels in them. I care about the chassis and the look of the monitor because it's going to sit on my desk for a long time and I'm going to have to look at it for years and years and years. So I don't want some cheap plasticky looking gamer monitor. Um, Either that or I have nothing better to do. We'll say it's the first one. I don't. I think it's this. I think it's the second. I think it's the second one. Apple should make a real Apple TV with their XDR technology, and I'll definitely buy it. They can't even make a 27-inch display with mini LED, so let alone a full on TV. But yes, I agree. It would be very, very nice if they could make a standalone monitor. 4K is good for most. Hard to see the differences unless side by side. Honestly, I would say that about 1080p. Most content in today's world is still viewed at 1080p. 4K is not the standard yet. And I don't think it ever will be. There's a law of diminishing returns that I get the amount of time it takes to film in 4K and edit in 4K and export in 4K and making sure everyone online has the internet bandwidth. Or most displays that we look at are not 4K. 4K TVs have gotten cheap, but we're watching more content on our phones than we are TVs these days. So even from an average viewing distance, a lot of TVs these days are still 1080p. I got the M1 Ultra Max Studio, Ryan. I didn't max out the SSD, but I got the 64 core GPU and the 64 gigs of RAM. So basically, I bought the fastest Mac ever, and I'm very excited to try it out. Um, Sorry, Carissa. I know you just joined, but we're wrapping up the stream here. I still used my 1080p Apple TV with a 4K TV. It looks the same. Exactly. A lot of people cannot tell because that's why I'm not a subscriber to the belief of, oh, well, eventually we're going to have 8K everywhere, and then we'll have 10K, and then it'll be 12K, and then in the future, all content will be 16K and 20K. No, because the human eye won't be able to detect the differences. We've already seen this happen with smartphones. The best-selling phones had growing pixel density, and then it started going down after 1080p. iPhone XR sold great despite having a sub 1080p display, and the previous best-selling phone was the 8 Plus and 7 Plus, which were 1080p. They had a higher pixel density than the XR did. Didn't stop people from buying that one. So what we discovered was that after a certain resolution and at a certain average viewing distance, people don't pick up on resolution differences, and they're not willing to spend the extra money. They're not willing to opt for a higher resolution, and they're not able to notice a higher resolution. So I think we're kind of peaking out at noticeable resolution differences. That's why I think 4K is never going to be the standard. I don't think in the future all phones will be 4K or all TVs will be 8K. I don't think that's going to happen. Editing in 4K now should be easy for studios with M1 Ultra. Beats out any PC at the market, export-wise and render time. Honestly, they'll be fine with the M1 Max. I'm doing 4K at 60. Most people don't shoot 60 frames a second. I like the higher refresh rate stuff personally, but most people do 24 or 30, which honestly the M1 can handle just fine. 35mm film is roughly around 4K visual density. Yeah, I mean, for movie theaters, they can go higher resolution easily because they're displaying on a giant screen. But even less people are going to the movie theater these days. There's less and less people going to the movies and just watching more stuff at home because TVs have gotten so good. I wouldn't even argue HDR is more important than 4K. That's another law of diminishing returns. It adds all this complexity to your editing timeline, to the file size of the recordings. And also, HDR is very difficult to notice unless doing side-by-sides. all that we've kind of peaked. I think we've kind of maxed out in noticeable differences in resolution. I'm not under the belief that, well, we need much better HDR technology, or we need much better resolution, or we need much better. Well, I might like frame rate, but no one else does. So I would like to see all content become 120 FPS, but that's not going to happen because no one can tell. People don't notice the difference. It's a similar thing with HDR. A few people can pick it up in side-by-sides, but that's about it. If you can choose between the Mac Studio and Mac Pro, what is your choice? I'd personally be fine with the Mac Studio for my own use cases, but if it's free, if you're just offering both and say choose one for free, then sure, I'll take the more expensive one, which is the Mac Pro. Yeah, HDR is just about boosting the brightness as high as possible. It's kind of annoying. Do you think there's a peak for smartphone display size, though? How big do you think smartphones will be without folding? Yeah, probably we're getting there. Somewhere around 7 inches is about as big as smartphone companies will probably get. 6.8, 6.9. You can get thinner bezels, and you can get the display big on a compact form factor. But I've been live for a while now, guys. So I'm going to bring the stream to a close here. But don't fret. I apologize for those who just joined. I have a tech video prepared. Despite, you know what? Safari's acting up today. Curse you, Safari. So I'm going to post it through Google Chrome, which is running in the background. Mini LED is slightly better than OLED in peak brightness, but it's not as good at contrast ratio. So there's pros and cons. Mini LED is not purely better than OLED, but it does get brighter. Okay, there we have it. Wait a sec. I love Apple displays. I prefer their color calibration and resolution. Some others look oversaturated. Yeah, I like it too. I think they do a good job. Okay, I just posted the iPhone SE video, which is live now. I'll drop it in the chat here. 120 FPS works great, but that is because it divides into 24, 30, 60, and 120 evenly. Gotcha. All right, link in the chat. Check out the latest tech video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.